All right, let's just dive right into this explainer. Today, we're going to discover how 10 foundational Greek myths actually serve as these incredibly vibrant mirrors, reflecting our most current, pressing anxieties about technology, power, and identity. We're looking at this brilliant theatrical collection called Voices of Olympus, and what it does is it reframes these ancient stories, not as, dusty museum relics, but as living, breathing commentaries on the human condition.
To help us navigate these pretty dense texts, here's our game plan. We'll start off with myths as modern mirrors, move into ambition and its price, then we'll tackle reclaiming the female voice, look at the cost of self-knowledge, and finally wrap up with living the myths today.
Okay, Section 1, Myths as Modern Mirrors. Let's step right in and look at how the ancients dealt with the exact same societal issues we're facing right now.
Take the Promethean figure, for example. In the ancient text, Prometheus doesn't just spontaneously steal fire, he actually does it after a highly calculated moral assessment. He looks down, sees early humanity basically freezing in the dark, entirely disadvantaged. So a Promethean figure is exactly this. Someone who hands this dangerous, breathtakingly beautiful power over to the world, knowing absolutely full well they're going to suffer for it. The text calls this individual rebellion for collective benefit. And honestly, that is the engine of literally every revolutionary story ever told.
Moving right along to Section 2, Ambition and its Price, Fire, Flight, and Labors. Let's examine the really extreme costs of this kind of ambition through 3 defining figures.
It's actually super fascinating to contrast these two Titan brothers. Epimetheus is literally the afterthinker. He enthusiastically but totally impulsively hands out fur, claws, and speed to the animals, and oops, leaves humans with absolutely nothing. But Prometheus, the forethinker, spots this massive flaw. He steals the fire from Olympus, but not in some fit of passion. It's completely deliberate. He knew his punishment, an eagle eating his regenerating liver for all eternity, was just part of the deal. The physical pain was already factored into a spreadsheet, so to speak.
So the crazy thing here is that this Promethean bargain, it's actively happening today, right now, whenever creators unleash irreversible technologies onto society. I mean, Mary Shelley literally subtitled Frankenstein, The Modern Prometheus. Today, we use the exact same term for scientists developing nuclear weapons, pushing space exploration, or building artificial intelligence. Whenever a creator introduces a permanent disruption to the natural order, they are stepping right into Prometheus's shoes. Because once that fire is handed over, you can never, ever take it back.
Just listen to the absolute despair in this realization from Daedalus. This guy was the ancient world's ultimate engineer. He built the labyrinth, and later, the wax and feather wings for him and his son Icarus to escape it. He gave Icarus explicit, basically aeronautical instructions. Don't fly too high where the sun melts the wax, and don't fly too low where the sea spray ruins the feathers. But the sheer exuberance of the technology itself overpowered the user. Icarus flew too high and fell. Daedalus's lament here highlights the heartbreaking flip side of ambition, the realization that invention is always vulnerable to human misuse.
And building on that idea of ambition, pop culture kind of forgets the really dark origin of Heracles' 12 labors. He wasn't just a generic superhero. He was a deeply traumatized figure driven into a temporary madness by the goddess Hera, which led him to destroy his own family. The labors were his grueling atonement. And here's the thing, he didn't solve them just by hitting things harder. To defeat the multi-headed Hydra, he actually needed his nephew Iolaus to cauterize the necks with fire. To clean the Augean stables, he didn't just shovel, he used engineering to literally divert 2 rivers. His ambition was about survival and redemption, proving that heroism actually requires partnership, heavy intellect, and enduring profound trauma.
All right, stepping into Section 3, Reclaiming the Female Voice. Now we're going to untangle the incredibly complex narratives of gender, victimhood, and power.
Look at this really dark twist in the evolution of the Medusa myth. In the early Greek texts, Medusa was just born a gorgon, a monster specifically designed to be killed by the hero Perseus. But in Ovid's later version, she was a human priestess. She was violated by the sea god Poseidon right in Athena's temple, and Athena, rather than punishing the powerful god, punished the victim by turning her into a monster. It's a chilling mirror, isn't it? When the system fails to protect a victim, the culture often just transforms her into the monster. We celebrate Perseus for cutting off her head, but really, he's just a tool of an unjust system that punished a woman for her own assault.
Tracing her myth across time, it's wild to see Persephone completely transform from a kidnapped victim causing winter into a fully empowered queen.
Originally, her abduction by Hades was just the ancient explanation for the seasons, her mother Demeter's grief literally freezing the earth. But down in the underworld, Persephone evolved. She claimed her power. She helped the dead. Did she choose to eat those pomegranate seeds that tied her to the underworld? Well, modern interpretations strongly suggest she did. She ends up becoming the only deity to hold full dual citizenship in both the realms of the living and the dead, perfectly navigating that ultimate tension between her mother's expectations and her own agency.
This is such a piercing realization from Helen, and it completely forces us to recognize how women in these texts are routinely blamed for the incredibly destructive choices of men. Helen is famous as the face that launched 1,000 ships, completely blamed for causing the 10-year Trojan War. But in these texts, she acknowledges the hard, ugly truth. The men fought for pride, for treasure, for power. She was merely the convenient narrative excuse they used to justify their violence. We actually see a very similar dynamic with Circe in the Odyssey. She turns men into pigs, sure, but not out of malice. As she notes, when given total comfort and safety, that's just what they reveal themselves to truly be underneath. She doesn't transform them, she just exposes them.
Okay, moving into Section 4, the cost of self-knowledge. We're diving into the deepest psychological struggles now, asking a really tough question. Is finding out who we truly are actually worth the devastation?
You've probably heard this phrase, know thyself. It was the absolute highest virtue of the ancient Greek world, literally carved into the Temple of Delphi. It sounds like perfect bumper sticker wisdom, right? But as we're about to see in these plays, achieving perfect self-knowledge is precisely the thing that destroys the protagonists.
When we break down the Oedipus myth, we are looking at Aristotle's absolute gold standard for tragedy. A brilliant man whose complete and terrible achievement of self-knowledge literally blinds him. Think about it. Oedipus is a man of intellect. He's the guy who solved the Sphinx's riddle. So when a plague hits his city, he naturally vows to find the murderer of the previous king. And despite everyone, from the blind prophet Tiresias to his own wife Jocasta, literally begging him to drop the investigation, he pushes forward anyway. And that horrifying recognition that he himself killed his father and married his mother is the ultimate cost of knowing thyself. He doesn't blind himself in a fit of madness. He does it in the absolute clearest moment of his life because he just can no longer bear to look at the truth of what he is.
Now think of Narcissus and Echo as literally the victims of the very first digital echo chamber. Narcissus is cursed to fall in love with his own reflection. He literally starves to death just staring at this flawless, perfectly curated image that he can never, ever actually connect with. And poor Echo? She loved him, but she's cursed to only repeat the last words spoken to her. She has zero original voice. It is wild to think that thousands of years ago, the Greeks completely nailed the anxieties of our modern social media age, the sheer danger of falling in love with our own digital reflections, and the utter tragedy of being trapped in a space where we can only repeat what we've just heard.
I want you to actually pause and think about this question for a second, because it reveals the myth's most painful lesson. Orpheus travels to the literal underworld to save his wife Eurydice. Hades agrees to let her go, but on one condition. Orpheus has to walk ahead and absolutely cannot look back until they reach the surface. It's the ultimate test of trust, but at the very last moment, he turns. Why? Did he doubt Hades? Did he doubt himself, needing to make absolutely sure she was really there? Or was his love just so overwhelming he literally couldn't take one more step without seeing her face? The real tragedy here is that any of those reasons are acts of love, and every single one of them kills her. The lesson? That love at its most intense can destroy what it most desperately wants to protect. Art and music could conquer death, but trust is just harder than talent.
Which brings us to our final section, Section 5, Living the Myths Today. Let's step back through the mirror and look at ourselves. Notice this incredibly haunting detail in the story of Icarus's fall. It reminds us that the actual subject of these myths isn't just the gods and the monsters, but the quiet, continuing indifference of the world to our own personal tragedies. The poet W.H. Auden looked at this famous Bruegel painting of the fall of Icarus. If you look in the corner, you just see these two tiny legs splashing into the sea. But meanwhile, in the foreground, a farmer just keeps plowing his field. A ship calmly sails right on by. The true tragedy, Auden notes, is that while someone's entire world is ending, someone else is, just opening a window or eating dinner. The world just keeps spinning, completely indifferent to individual disaster.
So here's the big takeaway from this explainer, and it's a challenge directly to you. Which of these ancient archetypes are currently shaping your own narrative? Are you a Prometheus right now, calculating the massive cost of a new venture? Are you an Echo, maybe struggling to find your own original voice in a really noisy world? Or perhaps you're Heracles, finally realizing the true strength actually requires asking for help. These texts survive because they aren't just old stories about the past, they are the literal blueprints of human behavior. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into the voices of Olympus. Keep questioning the myths you see operating around you, and I'll see you in the next explainer.